What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again, it's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? It's June, it's summertime. What better to do than to talk football? Let's get into doing some mock drafting.
Absolutely. I know it's only June. You guys are like, you guys are crazy. No, this is the best time. And It's going to be really fun, Brian, I think, to kind of do this drill as the off season or as draft season rolls along to see how our opinions change, see how we're feeling. Are we feeling better about those mid to late round running backs? Or are we feeling better about taking running backs early and kind of shifting? So I want to try and do this, maybe not once a week, but once every, try and get one in every, or maybe two a month, something like that. If you're not checking us out on YouTube and you're listening to the podcast, we appreciate you doing that. However, these exercises are really meant for YouTube. I'm sharing my screen. You can see our picks and our thought process. I'll try and articulate as much of it as I can, but I'm not going to ramble off every single pick, every single robot makes. Brian and I are going to do this together so we can kind of think about it and talk it out and kind of have a strategy. Brian and I traditionally are pretty similar. There's always some veering off one way or the other. But for the most part, we're going to do one quarterback, two running backs, three receivers. Actually, let's do two receivers.
I think for the majority of formats and majority of leagues, you normally play with two receivers, and then you're going to have like a flex or something like that.
So we're going to do one quarterback, two running backs, two receivers, a tight end. Actually, let's do a flex, which can be running back, receiver, or tight end. And then we'll do 4 bench spots. So 10 players overall. We're not going to get super deep. We're not going to pick a kicker or defense because most leagues I try to play in either don't have that or just, the last 2 picks doesn't really matter.
Hashtag kickers' lives matter.
Kickers don't matter. Ban them. Get rid of them. They're awful.
Young Wei Koo, MVP of the fantasy
12 team. We're going to go half PPR for this. We'll probably do a full PPR, and we might even do a standard, even though I don't know that really anybody plays in that. But if you think that would be something you'd like to see, drop it down in the comments on YouTube. Hit us up on Twitter if that's something you want to see. We can definitely make that happen. And I'm going to randomize the draft position to see where we go. And we are drafting. First. We're not doing that. Do you want to do that?
No, no.
I think it'll be fun. I think
it gives you a good perspective of all that time you have to wait.
So we'll try and do a few from different draft spots too, just so you guys can get a feeling of how our draft shift or as it gets later, what positions are we targeting. We're using the Fantasy Pros simulator. It's pretty sweet. But so we can start our draft and we won't do a clock for this one. Keep the conversation rolling. But we are starting our draft. Okay, we don't need to take the tour Fantasy Pros. Okay, Brian, we are on the clock. Let's put the draft board up. As you can see on YouTube, we have nobody selected. So I guess as we know, we got the 101. We're in a great spot. We talked some running backs. I think for us, for this draft, it's really 2 names. It's Christian McCaffrey. It's Derrick Henry. The question is, we're half PPR, so pass catching is important, but it's not the only thing. 2 years ago, McCaffrey was a league winner. Last year, Derrick Henry was a league winner, and even in half or full, was amazing as a running back. Is there another name, I guess, you want to throw in the conversation at the 101? Because for me, it's those 2 names, even though I as we do these, I'll try and do more receiver heavy starts because that's the way I like to go. But where's your head at?
Honestly, for me, I think I'm not quite that high on Derrick Henry, as everyone knows who watches the podcast. He's one of my least favorite players. I think Dalvin Cook is a little bit closer to McCaffrey, especially when you start to get into that half PPR, full PPR category, because everyone continues to think that Alexander Mattison is anything special behind him, that he could just take over. But even Minnesota knows Dalvin Cook is on another planet. And so they're going to do everything possible to keep the ball in their best playmakers' hands. And so I think he's the only one that's close to McCaffrey. However, Christian McCaffrey, when we're looking at if he plays a full 17 game season, 16 in fantasy this year, we saw him score over 100 points more than the next player 2 years ago in a half PPR scoring format. And even if he sees a slight decrease in usage, he's still going to be pacing the field with how he's used, especially in this offense with Sam Darnold and with the departure of Curtis Samuel. I think that's going to open up even more opportunities for McCaffrey as a receiver this year. So for me, I think the 101 has got to be Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I mean, your points on Dalvin, I think, are very good. I do give Alexander Madison a little more credence than you do. And
I've
I think
tried him so many times.
He's absolutely honestly, he's a huge part of why that trophy is sitting over my shoulder right now, because I held on to him even when he was hurt, wasting a roster spot, even though I'm traditionally don't hold your own handcuffs, hold your opponents. Guess who when Dalvin Cook did play that week? The guy I was playing had Dalvin Cook. I had Alexander Madison. That was the game changer right there. That is a big part of why that trophy is sitting on my shelf.
I will never discredit Alexander Madison as the best, handcuffs in terms of fantasy football, because he does get the lion's share of opportunities when Dalvin Cook is out, but he is not Dalvin Cook. So
okay, so let's move forward. For me, it would be between Henry and McCaffrey. For you, it'd be between Dalvin and McCaffrey. That's why I think we'll just go with McCaffrey and see how this rolls. Okay, so I don't need to see this. Cool. So whole bunch of running backs. I think it's going to be very interesting this year. Dalvin went 2, Kamara went 3, Henry went 4th, which I think is interesting. Aaron Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon, the first tight end, Travis Kelce, 111. I'm 100% on board with that. I think he is worthy of anywhere from 107 or so. I would not fault anyone who goes there. First receiver was Devontae Adams. Stairway to Evans, which is the 12 slot, going Adams, Tyreek Hill,
fabulous,
is amazing and something I love.
Yes.
Najee Harris, 205. And Mahomes went in the second round. Now, we could probably finagle this so he goes like third round, but if we're talking most home leagues, 3-4 is probably the latest I think he'll go. So let's throw in a little randomness. I kind of like it. Okay, so Brian, we are on the clock. We're looking. We obviously got McCaffrey at the 101. We got back to back here. We can stack elite receivers. Go AJ Brown, Michael Thomas, which, like, for me, those are 2 of my favorite players in all of the NFL. George Kittle's sitting out there. We could look at more running backs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift. We had a good conversation with Jared Smola from Draft Sharks talking some messy running back situations. Feel much better about Swift. And by the way, if you want us to hear us talk some wide receivers, including not AJ Brown, but Matt Harmon will be joining us, Yahoo's Matt Harmon, to talk some second-year wide receivers. We're working on a list right now, maybe some Brandon Ayuk, maybe some Jerry Jeudy, maybe some CeeDee Lamb, maybe some other names mixed in there. We're working on that. If there's this name you want us to make sure we discuss, drop it in the comments, hit us on Twitter. We will do that, make a point of making sure that player gets included in our conversation next week. We'll probably 3 to 5, maybe a few more if we're feeling feisty. Brian, is there a name that jumps out above all the rest for you in the list that we're looking at?
I mean, quite honestly, the guy that it has pegged as the top suggestion, AJ Brown right here, is a great value, because when you're talking about opportunity share, I think the arrival of Julio Jones kind of takes away from the expectation of what AJ Brown is going to be for that offense. But in reality, we saw Atlanta transition to Calvin Ridley as basically the wide receiver 1 last year, something that I think that Tennessee is not going to get away from, and that AJ Brown is their stud and Julio will be like a complementary piece on the outside. So I think AJ Brown is the pick here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. It's interesting getting him at wide receiver 8. I think that's
Yes.
about the right range. Um, DK going above Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley. I don't know that I would get there, but it makes sense, numbers wise. So let's go ahead and peg AJ Brown. And we're still on the clock. So if we're looking at receivers, we're talking Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans. These are the names we're considering. At running back, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Chris Carson, my boy Miles Sanders, and then George Kittle sitting there. I think neither of us want to go quarterback here, so we'll
No.
we'll, we'll overlook that. But what's your head saying? What are you thinking? I named a bunch of really good receivers. We could grab that running back early and see who's sitting there in the next handful of rounds. Or Michael Thomas, I feel like is going to be a discount, but I feel like if we overlook him here, by the time we're back on the clock, the odds of him sitting there are very, very low. So, what say you?
I think this is going to be a spot that if I do have the number one pick is going to be really difficult for me, because when looking at the available players, I think the first guy that jumps out to me is a Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting taken as the, what is that, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, the running back 14 or so
Yeah.
in what is considered the number one offense in the NFL. By most projections, they're supposed to score the most points in the NFL this year. So, I mean, why wouldn't you take that guy who's going to get pretty much the most of the carries out of the backfield with nobody else back there right now? And then when trying to load up on wide receivers here, I think it's really interesting that you see guys like Mike Evans and Amari Cooper, like kind of way down the list in terms of the tiers. And Amari Cooper was balling out. The Dallas Cowboys have like a top 3 offense in terms of what people are projecting them to score per game this year. So to see not a single Dallas wide receiver on this list when Dak is the consensus QB2, QB3 is something that you could probably sneak some value later. So for me, it's probably Clyde Edwards-Helaire to get those top 2 kind of running backs set up, and knowing that the NFL is so pass heavy now that you can get good value at wide receiver later.
And you would rather have CEH than DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders or Chris Carson?
I just think that the offense in which they play in and the very funneled usage of particular players, because when you look at this team, it's Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill on the outside with the peppering of other dudes that nobody knows their names, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because CEH this time last year was way higher. So
he was picked in the first round in the majority of drafts.
So let's take him and let's see what happens. Oh, there goes tight ends. There goes some receivers, some running backs. Oh, another quarterback. Got 4 quarterbacks off the board after Mahomes. It's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Kyler Murray.
CeeDee Lamb before Amari Cooper.
I think that might be the move. I think on a week, if you're like, I need somebody who can bring me consistency on a week-to-week basis, I think Lamb is probably that option. If you're like, I have AJ Brown, or I have, insert wide receiver stud here, and you're looking for those boom weeks, those 5 or 6 weeks where he'll go 250 and 2 touchdowns, 250 and 3 touchdowns, Amari Cooper may be a better option there. So we have McCaffrey, we have CEH. Now we're sitting here with our turn picks again. We got some receivers, Robert Woods, Adam Thielen, who quietly was a top 10 guy and no one really seemed to notice. Running backs is interesting with Gascan, Kareem Hunt, Mike Davis. We could look at ATN is on the board here for some reason. We got some quarterbacks. We got, a myriad of ways we could go. Odell sitting down here. I like that. Do we want to go bang bang running back receiver again? Do we want to load up on a receiver here and see what running backs are available? Are you considering? I think at this point with Kelce and Kittle off the board, we're just going to wait at tight end.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
No. I think you and I are in lockstep when it comes to tight ends. If you're not taking those top 2, top 3 guys, you're waiting until pretty much the very end of the draft to get some
Yeah.
guy that could be a sneaky selection.
Cooper Kupp is really interesting to me, especially in half PPR.
First name that popped out to me.
Okay. So that makes me excited. So why don't we take him? We're still on the clock. 5:01. I don't think we want to go. If this was best ball, maybe I would take Woods and Cup here, and take Stafford and try and load
Yeah.
up on that offense. But in this scenario, we're not going to do that. I think the names for me would be Adam Thielen. Makes a lot of sense. If we want to go running back, I don't really love it, but I guess Mike Davis or Kareem Hunt would be the names. Kenny Golladay is here. Tyler Lockett's here. We could go upside with Brandon Ayuk, considering we have Cooper Kupp and AJ Route, locked in. Odell would be another one to take a flyer on if it clicks again. He could be 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. So I don't hate that.
It's interesting because the guy that I'm looking at, who you didn't even mention, that's Deontay Johnson.
Okay.
Knowing that Pittsburgh, we've already heard the rumblings. I mean, I know it's coach speak. It's only June, so we have no idea what's happening over there. But the fact that this offense is supposedly not going to look anything like it did last year, they're going to get away from that dink and dunk crap. They're going to try to get the ball down the field. Deontay Johnson had double-digit targets and I think 10-plus games last year with Roethlisberger. He seemed to be Big Ben's go-to guy, and we saw those big boom weeks. And in terms of year-long fantasy, like you're playing week to week, so you need the guys that have the highest upside while also offering a decent floor. And Deontay Johnson, for the kind of routes he's running, I mean, the expectation is at least 4 receptions a game for 50-plus yards. So I think Johnson offers the best upside with safeness out of this entire group.
And so he's definitely a name that I'm really drawn to. As you mentioned, the volume was just insane last year, and something that I kept pounding the table for. Why are we not playing this guy more? He was 50% owned, 40% owned. Like what are we doing here? So I like that call. I'm interested to see, that Steelers offense, as you mentioned. Najee Harris is somebody that I'm 100% on board with. I think it's a ton of volume. But this offense is still going to pass plenty. Deontay Johnson's interesting. I think Adam Thielen is really interesting.
I do want to hit on real quick, though, too, when looking at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
I mean, you still got Dak there. And when looking at the rest of the board in terms of quarterback, I mean, you're going to be taking. I mean, what are we really expecting out of Justin Herbert? A lot of people are talking that he's going to jump into that top 5 category, but is this offense going to be built like that? Aaron Rodgers, are we going to see him come back the way he is, if he even comes back? Yeah. Russell Wilson, who the hell knows what's going on in Seattle? And then you get down into those other tiers. I mean,
yeah, I guess just for me, with Jalen Hurts, Ryan Tannehill, and even Matt Ryan sitting there, and Kirk Cousins even. I know we don't like him, but
hey, he's a sneaky top 12
fantasy point scoring potential, especially if we like Thielen, we like Justin Jefferson, we like the potential of Irv Smith, we like Dalvin Cook out of the backfield. He's gonna have value. So for me, I can't go quarterback here, but I get where your head's at, because if you want, of any of the guys left, the one that could be the QB1, I think is Prescott.
Yes, I think he's the only one out of this group that offers the number 1 potential.
Yeah, see, Russell Wilson could do it, but Seattle won't let him, so we're not
exactly.
So I think my 2 cents are we pass on quarterback here, and we grab another receiver, and if you want that to be Deontay Johnson, I can get on board with that.
I mean,
he's a lot safer than Odell. He's probably
plays in a pass heavy. Well, still yet to be determined.
Ayuk is somebody that's interesting, but maybe we can get it lucky and catch him later. Let's take Deontay and see what happens.
Oh, Thielen.
There's a receiver.
Where's that receiver run?
T. Higgins going before Jamar Chase is interesting. Both going in the 5th round is interesting.
Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, but that's the person who takes Mahomes in round 2 taking Melvin Gordon, like that makes so much sense to me. Like everybody has that league with the
Yes.
guy who brings the magazine and
Uh,
remembers 4 years ago when
yep.
Melvin Gordon was the RB1 and how is he still here in round 6? I don't understand. So I'm going to take him. I appreciate Fantasy Pros making this happen because I think it makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Ayuk is still there. Our boy Rojo is now in the conversation.
Too
Uh,
many mouths to feed back there.
Chase, honestly, for me, I think the top 2 names on this list, which are Chase Edmonds and Brandon Ayuk, um, make a lot of sense. Javonte Williams could be a name that if we're happy with CEH, we're happy with McCaffrey, we want to add a running back that not only has long term in case something happens to those guys, but has potential to pop and become a guy that we're talking about in that top 10, top 12 conversation come season's end. I think he makes a lot of sense.
Don't forget about my boy Zach Moss down there at number 85.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and nix that real quick. Juju, I
Uh,
think, is out. I think
I
David
want to
Johnson, I'm not touching.
I want to say
Um,
the most interesting name on this list for me, not necessarily somebody who I would grab right here. I think if I was wide receiver needy, I think the DJ Chark coming into this season on a bad team who's going to be trailing a lot with a rookie quarterback who they need to get integrated into this offense,
yeah,
knowing what Urban Meyer likes to run. I think he fits perfectly with that system with Trevor Lawrence back there. So I think that's going to be a good pairing. Now, because we already have 3 wide receivers, it's really hard.
yeah,
But sometimes for me in drafts, I'll just load up on the skill positions and just punt
100%.
on the other ones, taking value later. So
That is also my thing because we make it a lot of assumptions as we're drafting
yeah,
about how confident we are in certain players. And
yes,
you know what? There's a good chance that that player isn't going to produce,
exactly.
and that we're talking about Deontay Johnson as a guy we're excited about. But then Juju becomes a thing, and Najee Harris is a lot more involved, and they're going elsewhere with the offense, or Cooper Kupp gets banged up and misses time, or Julio's a lot more involved than we expect, and AJ Brown misses time, which we saw last year. So we can't assume that we had like even McCaffrey, who last year I got McCaffrey as my RB1, I'm locked and loaded, and then he misses basically the whole season.
Yes.
So I think making assumptions like that, I'm always down for taking the talent and figuring it out later, because with bye weeks and with trades and everything else, there's always room to maneuver and finagle your way through things. So for me, Chase Edmonds, I think, is Austin Eckler light. I love him in Arizona. I think he makes a hell of a lot of sense, especially in any league that gives you points for catching. And then Javonte Williams is a lot higher ceiling, but also has a lot lower floor in an offense that we're waiting for that team to take a step forward. But Drew Lock is still their quarterback, and it still could be a mess. So
He showed flashes in terms of fantasy brilliance, not
Mhm.
necessarily NFL talent, but
so if we're
yeah,
looking at
I
all the
I gotta say
players,
I do like the Chase Edmonds pick for sure
okay, so let's go Edmonds.
because I like the upside. Again, it's a
Yep.
week to week. You're looking for the top guy.
Now, do we take Javonte Williams, locking in 4 solid backs, including ones with upside, and then take our chances with receivers on the way back? Or is there a receiver that you like, or another player that you really like that you're like, let's lock him in now, and see what's left when we get back?
Well, when you're looking at the running back board, for instance, I mean, you're looking at Rojo, when it's Rojo, Leonard Fournette, and Giovanni Bernard. I mean,
Yeah.
how's that going to be split throughout the season? That's disgusting. Damian Harris in New England. I want no part of the Patriots backfield until the double-digit rounds. David Johnson's a no touch for me. The aforementioned Leonard Fournette down there, nope. James Conner, I do think we'll get the opportunity down by the goal line in Arizona, but we already have Chase Edmonds. So I think for me, the best value for potential here would be Javonte Williams, because he only has Melvin Gordon, who we've seen kind of flounder the last couple of years. And if they were to kind of move away from him and him become the RB1 in that system that we should see take a small step forward, we think, even with Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
I think he offers the best potential, and it locks us up with 4 good running backs.
Yep. And if we realize quickly that it's going to be the Melvin Gordon show and
Yep.
Javonte Williams isn't getting the payday or isn't getting the work, he's an easy cut, and we move on and we find somebody else. Because the waiver wire, especially those first 4 weeks, is going to be locked and loaded with
Yes.
upside options. So I think that's the move right there. So here we roll. Ayuk gone, Sutton gone. There goes Jalen Hurts. There goes Justin Herbert. There goes Ryan Tannehill. Brian, quarterback is looking bleak. We're looking at Brady. We're looking at Stafford, Joe Burrow, Matt Ryan. But we also
Tom Brady was a top 10 option last year.
a situation where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the 12 teams in this league have their QB1. Now, I'm hopeful at this point that we just take with the 1101, we're taking quarterback, and we'll take who's over there. Because as much as I love Brady, Stafford, Burrow, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, I'm happy with all of them. Hell, I'd even Baker Mayfield,
Baker Mayfield,
18.
Exactly.
Daniel Jones. If you think about this offense, healthy Saquon, they added Golladay to go with Darius Slayton, to go with Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram if he can be healthy. Like Daniel Jones could be a top 7 option come the end of the season. So
the fact that Jameis Winston is so far down the board, are we really expecting Taysom Hill to be the starting quarterback and play 70% of the snaps?
Sean Payton, we'll see. Anyways, I think all that conversation points us to punt on quarterback.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so if we don't like Damian Harris, we don't like David Johnson, we don't like Zach Moss. I'm not touching that.
I saw the guy.
Kenny and Drake. He's somebody that's interesting enough to me, especially with we've seen Josh Jacobs miss time, but not somebody I'm ready to take in round 8. I don't think. I think he's probably round 10.
I think you're looking at, again, between 104 and 105 right there. You're looking at 2 guys, Trey Sermon and Gus Edwards, who will have a defined role with their particular teams. With San Francisco, they're going to be missing Jeff Wilson early on. So Trey Sermon is going to work into the rotation immediately. Gus Edwards just signed a contract extension with Baltimore, and he and J.K. Dobbins now no longer have Mark Ingram to compete with for the run heaviest team in the NFL. That should only get better after a supposed down year last year. So I think both of those guys are great options.
So Gus Edwards, I feel like
running back.
Yeah, so I feel like Gus Edwards is somebody who has kind of a built-in floor. Obviously, if J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, then maybe he sees a lot more work. But even with Lamar there's still going to be someone else taking those carries. I think Sermon makes sense in we'll shoot for the moon, right? We'll see if Mostert can not be injured, and we'll see what else is there. But like, there's a very real possibility that we're looking at this offense taking off week 5, week 6. Trey Sermon is your running back. Trey Lance is your quarterback. Ayuk and Debo and Kittle, and done.
And we've hit on this each of the last 2 years with the San Francisco backfield in terms of, was it worth rostering the 4th guy on the depth chart? And the answer every year was yes.
Yeah.
Because they never settle on a guy who is the guy all the time. It's whether it's injury, whether it's playing the hot hand. San Francisco is New England West in terms of their running back usage. Just they get a lot more like play out of these guys, and they produce a lot more.
So now we're looking. I think we want to focus primarily at receiver. Jerry Jeudy is absolutely somebody I can get on board with. Jarvis Landry is going to be a PPR machine. Half PPR, I'll take those points. Will Fuller, Tua, if he can kind of take a big step forward, could be interesting.
I just can't get on the Will Fuller train.
Yeah, I'm with you. And honestly, if he was my wide receiver 5 or 6, I might feel better about it.
True.
But he's going to be our 4th option, and there's a chance with half PPR that we're playing 3 receivers every week. So I'm thinking receiver makes sense. Laviska Shenault much like our DJ Chark conversation
Yep.
makes a hell of a lot of sense as a guy who can step forward. But you know what Smola talked to us about with Jerry Jeudy, and if we get Teddy Bridgewater under center, that could be a upside play, a safety play as the number. We'll see what Cortland Sutton does, but he's at worst the number 2 option.
Yes,
Um,
I think even though I have slight hesitation in agreeing with Jared on that topic, the one thing I think that is very telling about what Jared Jeudy can be if Teddy Bridgewater were to take over the helm there is what we saw Robbie Anderson become in Carolina with Bridgewater, where it was they're running a lot of those little 7-yard slants, those little dig routes. They're not running those big deep patterns is expecting Bridgewater to hit them in stride and tight windows. It's get the ball out of his hands, get it to the receivers, and let them do the work. And he hit on it. Last year, Jared Jeudy had like the highest percentage of uncatchable balls of any wide receiver and still produced really good numbers. So, I mean,
and as much as we don't like Teddy Bridgewater from like an upside standpoint, Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson, and DJ Moore were 25th, 23rd, and 22nd in half PPR leagues per Fantasy Pros. So
and they play in a division.
Three top 25 receivers in catching passes from Teddy Bridgewater. So Jerry Jeudy then?
I guess that settles that. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy.
Let's do it.
And yes, and this is the way I like to construct most of my rosters is just pile up those wide receivers and running backs.
Yep. I think it makes too much sense. Okay. So at this point, I think we go quarterback and tight end and lock in our picks. Obviously, if we were going longer, we could, in theory, wait another 4 or 5 rounds. But I think at this point, for our 10 picks, we should at least get a quarterback and a tight end. So let's look at what we have at quarterback. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter because we got the next 2 picks. So let's just knock it out. So we have Matthew Stafford, who Sean McVay is raving about, but we'll see.
I mean, we've seen Jared Goff produce top 10 numbers too. So Matthew Stafford is a pretty big step up.
Yep. Joe Burrow. We like what they did. We'll see what he might be running for his life. Matt Ryan could be a lot of fun. I'm not a Matt Ryan
waiver wire ad in this.
My favorite way with Matt Ryan is if everyone's really excited about him and he's like a top 5 quarterback, you don't draft him because he'll underwhelm. And then when no one cares about him because he's whatever, that's when you draft him. Then he becomes a top 5. So he's interesting to me, I think.
And of note too, because he was one of my preseason favorite bets of last year to have over, I think it was 27.5 touchdowns because the previous year he had gone under. It was the first time in his career since his rookie and sophomore seasons, I think, that he didn't have a better season than the previous season. So the only way he could go is up, right?
Right. I think the other 2 names that make sense are Tua and Daniel Jones. If we just want to say, let's shoot for the moon, let's see what we can do. Because especially in 1 quarterback leagues, the idea of Baker or Wentz or all these guys aren't going to be drafted.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jared Goff's going to be sitting. What does Sam Darnold do in Carolina? Could he be interesting? Does Justin Fields get on the field by week 4 or 5? We'll talk Andy Dalton at some point, hopefully. And I know you've been very vocal on Twitter about your Cam Newton, Jameis Winston. There's a lot of names there.
Yeah.
So I think with quarterback, shoot for the moon. And I think,
you made a bet on him.
Which one? I made 2 bets on 2 outrights, 2 future MVP bets at 50-1, and I think 80-1, 90-1, something like that. There's 2 names, but I think the name you're referring to is Tua.
Yes, I just think he's set up in a system that is built for success for the quarterback in terms of what they want to do on the ground, the way that they're going to protect him with the kind of pass plays they're going to call for him. We've seen him spin the ball really good.
Yeah. And you know what? If he's not the answer, we'll know quickly. We punt.
And you
But
cut
when you
bait.
add Jalen Waddle, when you add Will Fuller, when you have Mike Gesicki, when you have Devontae
Exactly.
Parker, when you have Myles Gaskin catching out of the backfield, when you have that offensive line, this
Yep.
is a
And you
guy
have this defense.
that if you want to wait at quarterback, take him in round 14, has Lamar, I'm not saying he's Lamar. I'm not saying he's Mahomes. I'm not saying, but he could be the guy that pops in the double digit rounds
Yep.
that is all of a sudden QB1 or QB2 or QB3. And we're looking as one of the best investments from the season. So let's do that. Let's take Tua
Love it.
and let's shift over and talk tight end. This will be our last pick. Gesicki's there.
I was just gonna say we
Let's
could
just stack
just
him up.
stack the Dolphins
Irv
and hope that
Smith is
Gesicki
interesting to me.
going.
Evan Ingram is another guy that, when
He just
healthy,
can't stay healthy, that guy.
yes, but when healthy, he's in that conversation. Maybe not Kelsey Kittle, but right there with Darren Waller and whoever else you want to throw in tier two. I don't know if Jonnu or Gronkowski or Jarwin or any of these other names. Adam Troutman, somebody that if you really want to wait, I think could be kind of fun in New Orleans. But I think the decision is either Gesicki, Evan Ingram, or Irv Smith.
I mean, in terms of their talent levels and what they're able to produce with everything the same, Evan Ingram for me offers the highest upside, the best potential of the tight end. So I think at this point of the draft, when he's the first guy, you're the last person to take a tight end. You go with the guy with the highest upside.
I agree. And like we talked about with quarterback, there's going to be a lot of
Yes.
find the start of the week. Brian and I will try and give you some of those names
Yes.
each and every week on the Angle of Pursuit podcast. Evan Ingram is our name. I will do. We got a B plus, so let's
look at projected standings.
So that could be interesting.
Boo.
Oh, Brian! I was gonna take a screenshot. Gosh darn it!
Well,
All
that's
right.
my
Well,
fault, folks.
yep, that's the thing. I am recording this, so I will see if we can go back and post and get a copy of that, and I will take a screenshot and send it on our Instagram at AOP Podcast. Let me double check that just to make sure. If you're not following us on Instagram and you're an Instagram user, AOP Podcast on Instagram, trying to be more active over there. We've been sharing some of our initial rankings. I will try and share the draft board over there. I will try and share some other stuff. As I mentioned, Matt Harmon will be joining the show on Monday to talk second year wide receivers. Very excited about that. We also have some other stuff cooking in the background. Very excited about. If there's something you want to hear or you want us to discuss or players that you think are interesting or whatever it may be, if you're on YouTube, drop it in the comments. If you're not at YouTube, go to Twitter at Notorious KRO, at Greasy Rules, at FPAOP. Really, really want to up the engagement. Give us your thoughts, give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. If you think we made a terrible pick, drop it in the comments. Let us know. We're here for it because this is the time to figure all this stuff out, right?
Yes, and this will change drastically as well as we get further along.
To monitor as camp stuff happens, as other stuff happens. We went a little longer this week, but appreciate everybody that hung around and watched the whole thing. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you next time.